call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. We would like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mrs. Barber.
Here.
Mrs. Junk.
Here.
Mr. Carey.
Here.
Mr. Lawler.
Here.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Here.
Mr. Rebus.
Here.
Mrs. Witt.
Here. All right, so we have a quorum with 7 members present. Would anyone like to move something from consent to new business? No. Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? So moved. In a second? Second. And a roll call?
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rebus.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye. Motion carries. Oh, sorry.
Mrs. Witt.
We'll let you vote. Aye. Motion carries 7-0. All right, we'll move on to board and superintendent salutes.
Yeah, tonight we don't have any. We have our spring, with the school year just finishing up, our spring athletic and activity seasons are just winding down. So we'll talk with Mr. Faulkner and Mrs. Maris and invite our spring activity and athletic students here in the June meeting.
And do we have any public comments? All right, we will move on to the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda consists of the following action items: the approval of accounts payable and payroll May 2019, approval of minutes of the May 13, 2019 regular meeting, approval of resignations of employment of staff, approval of handbooks for support staff, second reading, approval of resolution to obtain land cash money from King County, approval of disposal trade-in of maintenance vehicle, approval of participation in Safe Schools program for the 2019-20 school year, approval of authorization to submit consolidated district plan, and the following informational items: the student suspension data report, the Freedom of Information Act request report, the field trip notification, and the Kaneland 2020 strategic plan update. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. And a second? Second. And a roll call.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rebus.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
And Mrs. Junk.
Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to new business. J1, discussion of Board of Education retreat workshop.
Yes, with the, as I shared in the memo, with the reorganization complete and the new board seated for the next 2 years, traditionally it's a time where board will have a conversation, determine if indeed the board would like to have a retreat and or a workshop, and if we do, there's some topics down there that I've listed on the sheet. Sorry, I did give a handout. Should be a handout in front of you. Some topics that we have had over the years, topics that we've discussed having over the years, and then a section for other topics if the board has other ideas. And so what we can do tonight is probably first of all determine if there are topics we'd like to have, and then if we do want to do a workshop or a retreat, we can either discuss options or dates tonight. I can always do a doodle poll later. If it might become burdensome to try to sit here and look through schedules and calendars tonight, that could be a challenge. So just want to leave it up to the board to see if you want to have discussion or a workshop and what discussion we have, and maybe topics that we want to, again, tackle at a workshop.
Is there a desire to have a retreat?
Retreat meaning a meeting in the district office?
Yes. Traditional, yeah.
Usually, so.
Is it facilitated or open? IASB facilitated or open? We prefer
Open?
no IASB, right?
Yeah, I think so. It could be
Or
open.
we have in the past.
Yeah.
So I would say yes and yes, and definitely probably should cover board superintendent agreements and primary communication.
Mhm.
I agree we should have one. I think we really need to tackle the advisory committee topic. And with that, I think number 1 and 2, our representation at those meetings.
I'd agree with that.
Yep.
And obviously, if there's some legal or legislative updates, we need to know those too.
Do you want to do that at that session, or do you think like the Friday updates are good? Maybe if it's Either?
Either one.
Yeah.
Because that one that is the legal legislative, we can always do that at regular board meetings too.
Right.
That's a topic that is reoccurring as things change throughout the year, so we can either do it either one of those ways.
What is the meaning of the middle one?
Individual or shared board goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we discussed for 2 years ago in August, we didn't have time to get to this topic, but it was the next topic we were going to tackle at that meeting, was to decide if the board wanted to try to do some individual or all-board goal setting, and that goal setting could be attendance at division meetings, attendance at III, any individual individual goals of ideas or things the board would like to learn more about, or as a board, set a goal that we could do something additional, something different. It was just completely a topic we didn't get to again, and it would be something new and different if the board wanted to talk about goal setting.
So we can have it on the list. If we get to it, great. If we don't, just keep pushing it.
You think that's like, see if we get to it?
Could.
Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I asked.
Yep.
I don't recall what the.
Yep, and it was nothing that, in the time that I've been here, or checking a little bit previously, that the board had discussions on or followed through with, but it was something that we did when we built it with Dr. Robert Madonia the last time we met. We had it on the agenda and we were going to talk about it, but it didn't happen.
Do you think internally facilitated is?
I would
Yeah.
prefer,
Yeah.
Yeah, so even, I mean, we know not ISB, but even no one else, right? We don't need anyone else there.
Yeah, they're
The
just,
Do we
they
difference
just
is
follow.
we have to do it in open session, but we don't have any reason to not want to be in open session, do we?
Yeah, I don't think so. And these are the topics, they're pretty,
I think we're better off in closed session,
then you would
We
have the
have to use
facilitator.
ISB.
or our lawyer,
Or
or our
or
lawyer.
Or another approved provider.
it's more provider.
I would have to check. I'm not 100% sure if she is. I know there are a couple other vending services that do provide facilitation or retreats.
I mean, I don't,
I'm gonna
if
just,
some people feel like they need to be in closed session in order to actually, fully share and discuss the matters, I mean, I'm fine that way too.
I'm gonna pick on you as an example, but let's say we have disagreements about communication lines of who gets to say what to who. I think we're better off handling that in closed session.
Okay.
So that, and that's my logic behind wanting it to be in closed session, is that some things we just don't necessarily, that has no effect on anybody other than the board members, so it doesn't.
Do you guys have a preference?
I don't care.
I think it should be unanimous. If someone doesn't want to, that's fine. But I'm good either way.
Yeah, I have no opinion on either.
So do one, should we do a doodle poll for?
That's a good idea.
So does that, so is Dr. Layden then gonna go look for a facilitator? Is that what?
I'll make sure, if it's in closed session, we do have to have one, so
Yeah.
I'll make sure we find an ISB
Okay.
approved facilitator or state code approved facilitator, but with the flexibility to build our agenda that we want to have, not a
Yes.
canned program that maybe
Definitely
so.
the provider provides.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what we don't want.
We don't want to.
So I know to find that.
We don't want their stuff now.
Okay, and I think we're shooting for June, but unless you want to throw out some other dates.
Did I see August in here?
I thought I saw August too, but I don't care.
August
Oh,
is
that's the last time we
that was
did
when we
it.
met 2 years ago, was an August date. So I can find, with other district things going on and maybe vacations, I can find 4 or 5 dates on a doodle poll and put them on. Because it is important that we all attend, that all 7 board members are there, so that we are on agreement with whatever conversations that we have and decide. Unless you want to find time right now.
I like the doodle better. I hate going through my calendar, so.
If you need some kind of direction to know which 5 dates, I mean, like, do we all need to email you with like June, like if we're going away for a week in June or anything?
Well,
So you know, well, that's not gonna be,
Well, let me do this. Now that the board is determined we want it in closed session with the provider, let me secure the provider, find out when they might be available, and then, based on that, maybe look at some dates, based on their availability also.
Cool. Awesome. So if nothing else? No, I don't. Oh, do we actually have to make a motion?
Yep.
Ooh, brother. All right. So I'd like to entertain a motion that the Board of Education direct the superintendent to plan the retreat workshop. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And a roll call.
Mr. Lawler,
Aye, sorry.
Mrs. Pavlik,
Aye.
Mr. Rivas,
Aye.
Mrs. Barber,
Aye.
Mrs. Witt,
Aye.
Mr. Carey,
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to J2, approval of the extension of electric and natural gas contracts.
Yep, I'll turn that over to Dr. Fuchs, and I know Mr. Payton is here if there's any additional questions.
Thank you. A couple years ago, in November of 16 and May of 17, we did an RFP for gas and electric, and the board approved 3-year contracts. So with that being said, the contracts actually go 1 more year. So tonight, what I'm asking the board to consider is extending the contract from 2020 to 2022 for each of those, gas and electric. The board does not have to do this tonight. Here's the reason why we are recommending that we do it tonight and get it started. First of all, with electric, I've given you some extra information. It's in the packet with the black cover like this. Both electric and gas prices are currently low, and if we extend our contract, we'll have a fixed price for 2 more years beyond 20 when the contract would extend. If the board would decide not to extend this contract, that's okay. Then what we'll do is next, probably winter, come back and do an RFP for gas and electric prices. So the benefit of doing it now is we know that the market's pretty low, relatively speaking, historically. However, might it go lower? It might. It's hard to say. But if you look at the historical chart for electric, from 2014 through now, you can see at this price, there's a greater risk of the price going up than there is of the price going down. And so that's why we're bringing this to you tonight, is to have the flexibility to watch the market. That's the other piece with electric and gas both. The price is actually set on the day that you sign the contract. And so what I'm asking for is authority for us to watch the market and time it such that we get the lowest price possible. And then on that day, we'll sign the contract. And then once we do that, I'll either report, depending on when it is, in a Friday update or at a board meeting of what price we actually got. For electric, we actually use a broker, and because when we did the RFP last time, the brokers' prices were actually lower than the suppliers. So we went with the broker, who is Satori. Currently, our energy supplier is with Dinergy, but should we extend the contract 2 more years, it would actually, for the last 2 years, go to Constellation, most likely. This is just a sample. It will depend on the day that the market is the best. Wherever the broker can get the supplier lowest is the one that we'll use. And I'll report that as well, should the board give us authority to move forward with the contract extension. With regard to gas, natural gas, we currently go directly to the supplier. The supplier for natural gas is Constellation. We've used Constellation for many years. Every time we do an RFP, Constellation comes in lowest. And so this contract extension would extend the Constellation for 2 more years, the contract with them. The board is only allowed to do 5 years in total, and then by law, then you must do a new RFP. So right now, we're finishing year 2 for both of them. Our contract goes for 1 more year, and then I'm asking that we have permission or authority to go out 2 more years, given the current market. The black line, I put the black line in there to show you your risk of the market going higher again with gas at this point is higher than it is going lower. But in reality, please know, it could go lower at some point. It's the market, we cannot predict it, but we know that right now, it's pretty good for us to consider. With regard to how much the board spends, for electric in 2017-18, we spent just under $630,000. We are on track to spend about $635,000 this year. It'll just depend on how hot it gets between now and June 30th. For gas, we spent just a little over $178,000, and we're on track right now to spend about $174,000 for this year. So at this time, I would ask the board, are there any questions or thoughts on extending the contracts for both electric and gas for 2 more years, given the market's current pricing?
Are either of these contracts like fuel contracts where they give you a market price drops and they take 3 cents off and then give you the rest? You know, plus or minus. So if like you lock in at,
So that you spot it?
yeah,
You know what, with gas, you can do that, but it's not complicated, but it has to do with their storage in, storage out. And so we've not done the spot market for gas. We used to, and then we stopped and we went to a fixed price. Because in the winter, when demand is high, the prices go higher than what the fixed, and the spread wasn't working for us,
okay.
so.
Go ahead.
Are these fixed prices?
Yes, they are,
So we're continuing what, the idea is to continue what we have,
yes.
this rate we have presently.
No, we would get a new rate for the last 2 years of the contract. Currently, we'll use the price that we have for 1 more year, and then we'll extend it for 2 years. We don't know what that fixed price is.
Sure.
We have an approximate fixed price, but the market changes daily. And so, once the board gives us authority, we can go and watch the days and try to hit the low day.
And remind me again, where are we compared to where our fixed one is?
Yep, that's on the board notes right here on the single page that's in your packet. I put our current price for both gas and electric. For electric, it's 0.05218 per kilowatt. Last week when we got our estimates, they were 0.06061. And then for gas, currently we're at 2.89 per decatherm. And last week, the market was actually lower than our current price. Again, that was last week. We have to watch and see where it goes, but we want to take advantage of the current market status.
So if I said, put this all out to bid today, can we bid it now for a year and a half in the future?
No, you have to wait until you're closer to the ending of the contract.
So when would that,
You know what, I would need to look up and see how long you can do it in advance.
best guess?
We did it in November for May, 6 months?
Okay, so all right.
Yeah.
The solar project, is that dead moving forward? Is there any,
Right now, that's in the hands of Commonwealth Edison. They're working on the interconnection agreement. So it's very much alive. We're just waiting to hear what ComEd has to say about whether we can tie into the grid or not.
But we don't know.
We're waiting to see if we're chosen, for one of the chosen few or whatever. Don't you kind of,
Well,
they only give so many? Didn't that guy say that?
Yeah.
yeah, there's a budget basically for that. So we're in line
Yeah,
Like you talked about, it's good to get in line as quick as possible, so you're,
above where the money runs out.
yes. And also, so that's one component to it. So we're in line. The second component is, can ComEd handle what we're proposing to build as far as their infrastructure? Does it have the capacity to handle what we're proposing to build? Because certain times we'll be dumping a lot of energy onto the grid, so they have to be able to take that without it overloading their system.
Refresh my memory, what was the goal? Was it half our capacity or half our usage or what? I'm not gonna hold you to anything, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, don't hold me to anything, but I think like overall, they're looking at like 68%, and that's based on what they think that ComEd can handle. They would certainly build it bigger, but ComEd's infrastructure can't handle it at certain sites. So,
What's the turnaround time on that? Like, if we get approved, all that works out, and we start building, how long does it take?
like a year. It's,
Okay, so we'd still be okay with extending this contract, it wouldn't conflict with that project then, right?
No, and
Yeah.
we're still gonna have to purchase, because we're not getting 100% of our
right.
energy, so we're gonna have to purchase,
Some.
yeah, natural gas is gonna be an ongoing
That's-
expense.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Taking that out of the picture, what we currently average, I know we're still waiting till June 30th, where we're at presently, the price the current price or average whatever price currently, how much of an estimate savings do we need to explain?
None.
There's no
It's
savings
not,
by extending it?
it'd be minimal, it just depends. I can give you a better estimate once I know the actual price. But like with electric right here, there is no savings. And then with gas, I would have to go back and look at our bills and see how many decatherms we used. And then you're saving about, for this price, you'd save about 4 cents per decatherm. So I could do the math on that. So I tell you what, if we move forward with it and I get fixed actual prices, then I can tell you based on current usage, what our potential savings or costs would be.
I would say what we're trying to do is, and it's kind of an educated assessment. I've got several vendors that send me, market outlook type things. And they're not necessarily vendors we do business with now, but they want to do business with us. They're people who bid when we go out for an RFP. They're all kind of in agreement, wow, we're at a historically low point right now. If you can lock in your energy rates, it's a good time to do it. So that's what prompted our looking into this. We can certainly wait and do an RFP in 9 months, give or take. And you'll get a lot of competitive numbers, but they'll be competitive for that point in time, and they might be higher. We're making an educated assumption that it's not going to go much lower from here, so we're just trying to lock in as low a possible rate.
Typically, don't gas prices go higher in the winter? In 9 months from now, we'd be in February or something?
Yeah.
Now, I know we have to purchase still the electric or solar thing though as well. But that means less usage of
The solar, you're using less from the grid. You're still using the same amount. It's not an energy savings program. It's just you're using less from the grid and more from a clean natural source where you're not impacting, you're reducing your impact on the environment. And you're saving money because theoretically they're selling it to us for a lower rate than we're buying it from ComEd.
So there is a saving.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a savings, but not an energy savings. There's a dollar savings. Do
Right.
you understand what I'm saying there?
I guess that, you said that we were buying it from ComEd for. Am I misunderstanding something because this bid would be, or is it because ComEd still is the delivery agent?
Yes, we
Correct.
still get a bill from ComEd, this is the supplier. there's a whole bunch of different, oh, I put it in here.
Yeah, there's a
The-
bunch of different components to what.
Exactly. So look in the paragraph between electric and natural gas. This fixed price,
I'm sorry, which,
yep,
okay,
the board report.
okay.
This fixed price includes the price for the utility, including the energy, congestion, RPS, capacity, storage, ancillaries, and transmission of the utility. So those are all the things that we have to have in order to get electric to us.
Okay.
And then I even say, it's important to note that the price does not include the distribution charges that are directly billed by ComEd, which is regulated by the state.
And that's where that program doesn't contradict with each other, because ComEd's still gonna be billing the distribution and blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Right.
All right.
So this could be a bridge to additional savings. This, doing the 2-year extension.
I don't
It's
understand.
really a
Bridge
cost
to
of,
the
it's a
lower
potential
cost.
cost avoidance, but you really don't know
Right.
with 100% certainty until that date gets here. And, you know, has electric and gas gone up at that point? But it's a potential cost avoidance, it's not really a savings.
It's
I
more of a
agree with that.
guarantee than it is anything.
Yeah, you're just kind of saying, we want to make sure that we're at this rate and no more for another 2 years.
All right. And the electricity would be coming through a broker?
Yes. And then we'll still have a supplier, and then depending on the day that the market's low, we'll pick the supplier that's the lowest.
Do we have,
And the broker will make that recommendation.
do we have any idea what the broker is charging us for this?
I do
Well,
not,
there,
yeah.
it's all part of that all-in number, so when we went
No,
out for the RFP the last time, that all-in number that they gave us included their fees, and that was still the lowest price, you know what I'm saying?
From even Constellation, who is a supplier, they were lower.
And it's probably because they pool several customers together and they go out and get a price. So they're aggregating our usage with other customers.
Okay, Constellation's still making money, Constellation is still making money off the deal, or they wouldn't be in the business of doing this, but it still ended up being a net savings for us, if I understand? Okay.
Constellation is the supplier for our gas.
I'm sorry, I used the
Yep.
wrong name.
Yep, Dinergy is our energy.
I meant,
Satori is our broker.
thank you, Satori is who I meant,
Yes.
thank you.
They don't
Yep.
send us a different bill, it's all in that bill
That
that
we
we
did.
get for electric.
All right, so just to think out loud for a minute. We're talking about something a year and a half from now, locking in our prices. And while we're not going out to bid for a $600,000 yearly cost, we're still shopping prices because the broker's doing it for us, even though he's making money somewhere along the way.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I guess, I'm a little uncomfortable not putting things out to bid, especially in those dollar amounts, but I kind of, sort of are, but not really.
And we did it 2 years ago.
But that, to me, doesn't,
Yeah.
not
Okay.
relevant. But I appreciate, it's
Yeah.
just, I'm a little hesitant a year and a half ahead of time, but at the same time, you can't tell me what's gonna be 2 years from now.
And there have been times in the past where we've kind of had similar conversations, and we said, well, you know what? It probably makes sense at this time to bid it out, but just considering where the numbers are, we thought it made sense to have this conversation.
And I guess I don't know. I guess I'm comfortable with the electric, and because we're getting a bunch of different numbers, I'm not so comfortable with the gas, where not knowing what other companies might offer us. Is my 2 cents worth.
I do think the gas is less significant to the budget, you know, and it's heading in the right direction, but I hear what you're saying.
And I still believe that the risk is probably greater or less, or
Greater to wait.
greater to wait. I'm sorry, not to wait, to do it.
Well,
The risk
the risk
is
is greater
higher
if
if
we
we wait. I agree with that. Thank you. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. But
So So
I
if
guess
we
I'm not
try
smart
and
enough
save
to know.
If we
Yeah.
try and save a couple of tenths of a cent per therm by waiting, well, the whole market could move up. And yeah, we bid and we do save those couple of cents at that time, but if we would've locked in down here,
No, you have a valid point,
Yeah.
and I understand, I don't know that, I mean, it depends on whose tea leaves you're reading as to whether or
yeah,
not.
no, you're absolutely right.
Absolutely, yeah.
But if you say, boy, I think in 2 years, the price could be 5% less, the 5% of 178,000 isn't that much.
Well, and we're
Yeah.
talking about waiting, our best guess is 7-8 months, we could bid the gas prices, which we might want to wait a year till it's summertime, but, I mean, if you listen to the news, they say China's blah, 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 and everything's falling apart and the world's ending, or if you had to listen to someone else. So I guess depends on your level of how much certainty you want in the future.
But it is a 20-year set of data points, and I mean, it's a pretty good statistical range, and it has a much greater chance actually instead of going higher than it does lower. So I'm much more comfortable with that than I am rolling the dice the other way. 20 years is a pretty good spread to look at. 18 years, whatever it is.
So if we were to, so we would approve this idea tonight or whatever, and then you guys would watch the market for how long? How long, what's the outside time that you're comfortable waiting?
Well, I would
Yeah.
say we would just talk to our current vendors and say, okay, when's the best time to do this, and kind of let them guide us. I mean, neither one of us is energy experts, you know.
And we don't feel like we would run the risk of them maybe not giving us the lowest time to, if we were gonna wait, because they make more money if they.
They want our business, and Constellation, we've been their customer. We have good relationships with Mike at Satori as well. He's moved a couple different places that I don't have a problem with either one of them.
I anticipate that they're going to say you need to probably do this real soon.
Yeah.
I don't think we would be waiting very long,
I don't
because I think everybody's nervous that things are gonna start to go higher. That's the sense I get from all those, different suppliers that are, just providing market feedback and stuff. That everybody's waiting for it to start to ramp up.
I'd still prefer to split them, but I guess that's just me.
I'd say keep together. Is there kind of a straw poll of how we want to make the?
So when you say split them, you mean go ahead with the broker for the electric, but bid the gas?
That's my opinion, yes, ma'am.
I would disagree, Ryan.
That-
Yeah,
Feel free.
I like 20 years of data. I think that's plenty for me to feel comfortable with it.
Split together?
Somebody else say something.
If there's no true savings here, I'm indifferent.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you want to keep the cost down as much as you can. And I mean, to me, I don't, I'm not sure that we need to tell you to do that because you should be doing it anyway,
Trying. That's the goal.
you know?
I do appreciate the fact that you're bringing that, you're
Yes.
looking forward and paying attention to what's going on, not
Yes.
reacting, and you're being proactive.
Thank you.
Yes.
I guess I feel like, we're at the mercy of the people who know the industry, I guess, and you guys say you trust them, I don't know any different, I guess. But it just seems like, if they're saying that the time in order to bid something could put us in a worse position.
And I can't argue that, it might.
Yeah.
And I think like Aaron said, the data, if you look at the number of
Yeah.
blips below the baseline are fewer than above, so that historical average would say now is the time. That's part of the reason why we had the discussion to bring it down.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to shoot for this. We'll see how this goes. So I move that the Board of Education directs the administration to extend the electric and natural gas contract 24 months each with the current vendors, Satori and Constellation respectively, with prices determined on the day of the signed contract. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And roll call.
Mrs. Pavlak,
Aye.
Mr. Rivas, Mrs. Barber,
Aye.
Mrs. Witt,
Aye.
Mr. Carey,
No?
Mrs. Junk, Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1. We'll move on to superintendent report.
Yep, a couple times throughout the spring now, we've brought a couple legislative updates with the spring session ending, excuse me, on Friday, May 31st. Wanted just to share a few things that we have heard and we do know that are coming up. Representative Jeff Kiker and I have been in touch a few times. He does a real nice job of reaching out when there are questions. Go ahead.
Isn't Wheeler the rep for this area, or is it part of a different?
There's both.
Okay.
There's Syverson, Wheeler, and Kiker are the three state senators and representatives in this area.
Oh, they cover the, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so a couple of things that we've learned, most likely what is on the governor's desk now is that the school day language for the e-learning days, if that remains unchanged by Friday, the 2 days that we have now that we discussed on our calendar, one day in November and one day in February that we had slated for e-learning days where Ed Services were going to push out information to our students, that option is going to be off the table. So what we would do then is on our calendar, I'll bring it back in June, once this is finalized, May 31st, bring back an updated calendar in June and just transition those 2 days back to PD days so that our schedule would be equivalent to what it was this current year. Because what the legislative looks like it's going to say is that the e-learning days are for emergency days only. So then the e-learning days that we had scheduled, set in advance, wouldn't be allowable for our cause.
But they're going to allow e-learning days for snow days.
Emergencies, yes, snow days, emergency days. There's a couple other, up to 10 days would be the max, and emergency days are what most people would use it for. And also there's the option for potential internships and a couple of other items. Parent-teacher conference is one of them, so we have those slotted and those would stay. But what would change would be I think it's February 28th and November 26th. I'm going to revert back to true PD days without any students doing anything on their roll.
I have a question, but I don't know if it fits the category.
Okay.
How are we going to test our e-learning capabilities then? So that was the point of those 2 days, was my understanding.
The November one for sure. So there is no, there might be some ways through Ed Services they can push some assignments out or push out some other activities and see if students can do them, but it wouldn't be required for them to do them because they're not officially e-learning days. So we're just going to have to, once we roll out the one-to-one and then see how it's going, but there's no official way to test it. I know the districts that were the state-approved districts, they were approved for 2 or 3 years, never did a true e-learning day until this year, and it went well for 2 of them, and one of them, I think, had some glitches they had to work through. So even those districts that were approved in the state for the pilot program had waited 2 or 3 years to do their first one. So we would have to wait to see, plan, and I'm sure it will go well if indeed we do use them. Okay. But part of the e-learning for emergency days, there are some strict stipulations that you have to have as far as agreement with both any of your associations. So we'd have to talk with our teachers, support staff, and make sure we had a plan in place. We have to make sure we get the information out to the community 30 days before you would potentially use it. And then also just ensure to the best extent possible that everybody would be, have Wi-Fi and be able to access the internet for homework.
Will Dr. Mum and Mr. Rice come out and do a presentation on what they're going to do with their plan? Will we see what it looks like?
For if we do go the emergency, yeah, if we do that, we still have some conversation this summer to see if, with both SPEAK and KEA, if we're willing to try to make it work by the beginning of the school year. Because if we don't get it up and running early into the school year, then we probably won't have time to get it running for this year. Sure. So then emergency day, e-learning days on emergency days may not be an option for us, and we would just revert back to like we did this year and just add snow days and tack them on to the end of the year. So we're going to check the viability of that, and if it is something that we would do, that would come back to the board, because we do need board approval, and then communication to the community, so it would be something you would see and hear here. Okay?
So
The community
what's
is
the opposition to it?
Yeah.
Why?
I
It
think,
seemed like it was almost a done deal, and then,
Yeah.
with the legislature, and then what's their issue with it?
I think there's some fear that if, without the cap at 10, because what it was previously was you could do whatever you wanted as long as you wanted with as many days when they initially approved it. So I think there was some fear, those districts that may not have one-to-one, may not have implementation for their district, and also would districts try to circumvent regular education, teachers, students with teachers in class, and go to more of an online platform for a majority of the time, or more often that may not be the best for students right now.
Now, did they push the E-Day thing, right? The
Well,
thing-
it was interesting because it was part of the evidence-based funding, and about, when was it, about October last year, it was kind of in the bill, because the bill was 800 pages, 1,000 pages, and then all of a sudden, somebody, or a number of people from ISBE found it, saw it, and then the alarms went out to everybody. It's like, hey, do you know that this is going to happen? And some were very much for it, some were opposed to it, but the information went out. So this year, it was technically legal this year for districts to do. Many, as we didn't find out until right before winter hit, so most districts weren't ready to go. A couple of the pilot groups were and were able to utilize it. And then as it just got more firmly entrenched, there was just more wait and see. Maybe it's too fast, go a little slower, wait and see, and maybe that's why I think the cap of 10 days came in, for the fear that maybe people try to utilize too many of them. And there was truly
It's
no.
not just capped, it's only emergency,
Yes.
so.
And it's emergency and it's capped, yes. And I think the fear was too, without the 5 clock hours, I know our district wouldn't do this, but would districts count 2 or 3 hours regularly as a day? How often would they do that? Because technically with that law, the way it was now, and probably will revert away from, that could have been a regular school day, and it could have been as often as the district wanted to.
Was it supposed to be a regular school day with e-learning? Or e-day, whatever?
They didn't combine those two, because what they said was a regular learning day was whatever the local district determined a learning day would be.
Okay. Oh,
So-
what they determined?
Yep. Could be an hour up to 10 hours. Could have been whatever the local district wanted to do for an e-learning day.
Like one of those schools that you mentioned, was that one of those West Chicago?
Yeah, West Chicago was one of the pilot programs, along with Leiden and Gurney.
Because I know one of the students there, they said it was all day. It was all day, you know.
And that's one of the things, along with Speak and KEA and our groups, would have to try to determine those types of things of if we do it and want to try to get it ready for the school year, 1920 school year, we'd have to have those agreements of what it would look like and work through all of that.
The good thing though is one of our concerns altogether was was those students that didn't have access to Wi-Fi. The good thing behind that is to determine who will we have it, because we'll have the one-to-one. They can actually take it home and figure that out and get the
Right.
feedback, hence the hotspots that
Yep.
we would potentially need.
Hopefully earlier in the year, we'd find out which buildings maybe need more of those and make sure that those local buildings had more of that access. So if emergency day were to be used and we knew in advance, we could send the students home with those, or those home with students.
Yeah, because the potential of predicting those days or,
Yeah.
potential.
Yep.
Cool.
Another item, the property tax freeze, that kind of came back up again, and right now, there's a property tax relief task force that's both Republican and Democratic build to take a look at it, and by December, they're supposed to have a recommendation to the governor about what it should look like into the future. So there should be nothing that would take place here by May 31st, but some recommendation by December 31st. And what they want to do is see how that would look with any potential new revenue sources with the graduated income tax. Again, then Friday, like I mentioned a couple times, that is generally the day that the budget comes out. If you recall, last year, there were a number of items that were included in there last minute. So as the conversations are taking place in Springfield, we think and have heard a number of things. We're getting calls on things, recommendations, but until they finally sit down on Friday and make that final determination, we don't always know. So as soon as we learn more of that, we can share it with you, and maybe even as a part of our board retreat. Should have seen an email that came out on Saturday, this Saturday, June 1st, just the flyer. We will be doing a tree dedication and plaque dedication in honor of Lori Hamblin at John Shields Elementary School. The tree will be planted, a tree will be planted at both John Shields and Harder, because she did spend the year at Harder this year, but it will be held at John Shields Saturday at 10, because that's where Lori spent the majority of her Kaneland career. And so the family will be there. A couple students who were advocates for the plaque being named or the gym being named after Ms. Hamblin, they may be there too. And if any board members can attend or any other staff or administrators, we'll be happy to see as many people there as possible.
It's not we aren't naming.
Nope.
Right, okay.
Nope. A plaque is going to go up in her honor. There's nothing going to be named after her. Yep.
This Saturday?
This Saturday at 10 o'clock at Shields. And hopefully it's one of the, we'll find a couple minutes when it's not raining, be able to get out, take a look at the tree, and then have to run back in if it's raining. But again,
Just
with,
water in.
that's right, that's right. Probably the best time to water it. Summer days, if you remember the summer week schedule, once the summer gets going, we revert to Monday through Thursdays, and then close the buildings down on Fridays. So I'll send a reminder in the weekly update, but that is June 10th is when it starts, and it goes through August 2nd. But again, I'll send a reminder for those of you that are looking for us on Fridays. Take a little longer and a little harder to find us. So, but that will be, with the shorter summer, it'll be about 7 or 8 weeks of that schedule.
I was going to say that takes into account the fact that we're starting already.
Yes, it does. Yep, so we come back on Fridays a week earlier than when school starts, and just happens to be a week earlier because school starts a week earlier this year. Finals start on Friday and then go into next week, Monday and Tuesday, with our last day on Wednesday, June 5th. So if any questions that you have on end of the school year events, any activities, a lot of them have culminated and wrapped up, but if there's anything, please reach out.
So
And
the last day is the 5th.
Yes, June 5th. And then the last thing, our next board meeting, for June, July, and August for the summer, there's just one meeting, so we do have a little bit of a longer stretch. Our next meeting is not until June 24th. And then when I do get information for the workshop, I'll be sure to send that out, and we'll find a date. And that's what I have for updates, so thank you.
Don't have anything tonight, thank you.
Nothing. All right, anyone from the board? Nope. So topics for future agendas. Nope.
I think we've got enough going.
Public comment, the second opportunity for public comment? Nope. So we will have executive session tonight. We're going into executive session for the collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, as well as the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Is there a motion to go into executive session for these reasons?
So moved.
And a second? And a roll call.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0, and so because there's no action after executive session tonight, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded.